Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to go over the Alpha Trigger by EDgun West. This is our new custom drop-in trigger that will retrofit to your EDgun Leshiy 2, and we feel it's a great improvement over the old one. We'd had some requests that people wanted to have a positive feedback that the safety was on, so this trigger setup will actually block the trigger from moving if the safety is on. We also had some complaints over the years that if you slowly pull the trigger, you'll prematurely open the valve. You'll hear a hiss as you do that. That premature valve open can actually cause a little bit of accuracy issues, as what you're doing is pre-dumping the plenum a little bit before you get a full valve open. So we've addressed that and given you two options. So what you're looking at right now is two assembled Alpha triggers with two different setups. The top trigger setup is the lighter trigger pull, while the bottom one is the quick trigger pull. The quick trigger pull will not hiss, the top one still will, which is the light trigger pull. When you get your kit, you're going to get a new trigger bar. It's going to have two holes in the front and two holes where the spring goes. It is important that the assembly is followed so that if you're using the top hole on the front, you'll use the top hole on the back. If you use the bottom hole on the front, you'll use the bottom hole on the back. It is really important that you follow those directions. And now I'll explain what those two functions do. As we look at the top trigger, you'll see we have placed the pin into the trigger assembly on the front, and we correspondingly have put the spring on the top of the trigger bar. This setup will be a much lighter trigger pull. It's probably just around 1 pound, but because it's lighter, it allows you to operate the valve manually. So as I've trained you guys in other videos, you'll have to have a quick positive trigger pull if you're going to use this setup. As we look at the bottom trigger here, we have put the pin in the lower trigger and in the lower bar for the spring. This is going to be a much quicker trigger setup. You'll come to the wall and it will force you to positively pull the trigger. This is going to have a slightly heavier setup. So totally up to you what you'd like to do. We give you the option when you get set up. All right, so let's go ahead and show you now how you're going to set these two things up. So if you go back to the other videos, I showed how to take apart the gun. I can't really show you the whole gun because YouTube doesn't really like modifying things, if you get what I mean. So we're just going to go ahead and start with your lower trigger group. You're going to have this, and you're already going to have this taken off. If you don't know how to take this off, I recommend you go through my other videos. I'll probably put a link in Disassembly in this video, so if you have trouble or you don't know how to take this trigger group off. Okay, so the first step is going to be to remove the trigger bar. That's simply done by grabbing the trigger bar and pulling it upwards firmly. Your entire trigger assembly will come out just like that. The next step is going to be to remove the trigger nut. You'll need a 3mm hex wrench, and this is just a simple nut. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, just like normal. Go ahead and set those aside. You will no longer need those. The next step is to remove the safety. The easiest way is to use your 3mm hex wrench that you just used to take it apart. Put the trigger on a soft but firm countertop and push straight down. You'll hear a click, and that sound is the detent ball releasing from the frame, and now you'll be able to pull the safety out. At this stage, I want you guys to be really careful, as you're going to need to save all these parts. You're not going to need the safety, but you're going to need the little ball and the 3mm pin and the detent spring. So all three of those are going to be, so set those aside so you don't lose them. The next thing you need to do is take apart the pins from the original trigger. So go ahead and just push those out and remove this spring. You're going to need that later. Last step is to remove the last 3mm pin. Sometimes it could be in there a little firm, so just use a 3mm punch, or if you don't have that, I suppose you could use your hex wrench. And you're just going to drive it out just like that. Once that's assembled, you're going to leave that completely assembled, or whatever you want. You can go put that in your toolbox, and you're going to need that little 3x6mm pin. Okay, so now in your bag, you're going to receive a new trigger bar, a new safety, and a new trigger. And the other parts from your Leshiy you're going to reuse. Okay, so step one, in this setup, we want to do the quick trigger pull. So if you remember, that's bottom, bottom. So you're going to line those up. Sometimes what we find easier is to use your 3mm hex wrench or your 3mm punch and use that as a guide to line those holes up. Once that's lined up, you're going to take your shortest pin, which is the 3x6, and you're going to push it in there. Go ahead and start it, and then you can just hammer it in with a little punch, and it should drop right in. Now, important thing before we move on, make sure both sides are flush, because if any side of the pin is slightly proud, it won't go into the trigger group assembly. So just double check both sides are flush, and you're good. Okay, next step is let's put the spring axle onto the top of the trigger bar. Remember, we are not using the second hole, that's for a lighter trigger pull. So you're going to slide the axle in a little bit. It should be a little bit firm. And now we find it's easier to attach to the axle, and everything is going to be, as the shooter goes, as the shooter pulls, to the left side. So your little hook is going to be down, and you're going to go into the left side of the hole. So that's as the shooter is holding the trigger, everything is on the left side of the trigger. Okay, now moving on to the next stage, we're going to set up our safety. What you'll see is you'll have two holes. The second hole is going to be where your detent ball goes. So first put your spring in the hole, put your 3mm ball. If you lose this ball, it's just a regular 3mm. You can get them on Amazon. Hopefully you don't lose it. Just like that. Okay, now let's go back to your trigger group. Visualize how you're going to set it up. As you can see, the trigger hook and the safety are going to be married inside your trigger assembly. So now let's get your trigger assembly, and now we're at the tricky part. So as you're looking at it, you can see that there are the very first set of, let's call them axle perches. I guess that would be called an axle perch. That's going to be where your safety goes. If you look at the very second to last one right there, that's going to be where your trigger axle goes. So everything's got to be pushed in at the exact same time. So what you're going to do is put things in position to do that. So make sure that the ball stays in place. This is going to be the frustrating part, and I'll tell you a little trick. To keep the ball from locking, you can use just a little dab of silicone on the ball itself. Not much, you don't want it all over the place. You just want it to make it sticky. Stick the ball with a little drop of silicone in there, and as you see, if you turn it upside down, it won't fall out. So that's your little tip of the day for keeping it in place. Put your safety axle in, line it up to the perch, and just get it in position just like that. Don't worry, we're going to show you everything as we turn it over so that you're not confused. But you're going to be looking at it just as you're sliding everything in. The next thing is going to be to put the trigger in, making sure that the spring stays on its axle, and you're going to put it in its proper axle perch. And you need to push the two pieces together as we showed, as they look like that. Now we use a little pick to push the ball down and put the safety in position. This is the point where you just be patient, just keep working it, and you'll get it in. Don't worry if the axles have moved a little bit. It's more important that the ball stays in place. You can fix the axles that they may walk a little bit. Okay, so now we have everything in place. We're going to use our punch. Push the trigger down first. Pushing the trigger down should push the safety in place. Make sure that both axles are in place where you don't have one proud of the other, or you won't be able to get it into the receiver. If your trigger group won't go into the body of the Leshiy, it's because one of the axles is too proud on either side. So just make sure that they're centered. It's very common for them to walk. Now let's do a quick function to make sure that everything works. Safety works. Put it on fire. And check. All right. And now we're ready to reassemble. So let's show you first the lighter trigger pull. The lighter trigger pull is going to still hiss a little bit when you pull it slowly. So we'll show you how the safety functions first. So put it on safe, and you see that it blocks the trigger, so you get positive feedback that the safety is on. You'll click the safety forward into fire position, and if you pull really slowly, I'll be quiet, you'll hear it hiss. Okay, so in this case, the proper way to use this trigger is a quick positive pull like you would on your classic setup, and you'll get consistent shots if you operate it that way. Now, if you like to have a more controlled trigger group, or trigger pull, excuse me, you can use setup number 2, which is going to be the quick trigger setup. You'll see that the safety works exactly the same on both setups. We put it in the fire position, and no matter how slow we pull it, it won't hiss. I'll be quiet. Okay, so that explains the Alpha trigger. If you guys have any questions, of course, you can hit us up at sales@EDgun West as always. We also have instructions, visual instructions on the product page to show you where to set it up. And we hope you found this video informative. If you have any questions, of course, give us a call, text, or email us at sales@EDgun West. Hope you enjoyed the new trigger, and thanks for watching.